Good morning, everyone. We'll get started in about 2 minutes.
Blair, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Perfect.
Yep. Scared the daylights out of me.
Do what?
You scared the daylights out of me. Yeah, we're gonna start.
I think it was all of us.
Yeah, that really caught me off guard.
Well, my computer's set to Central Time, so I got here at like 6:30, thinking I had to be on here at 9, getting all my stuff together, and I realized I'm on the Eastern Time today, so I had plenty of time to be ready for y'all.
It never happens that way.
No, it doesn't. But I happen to be in Tampa today, so that worked out perfect. I got an extra hour.
Good. All right, I've got 10 o'clock. If everyone's okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. All right, so we'll start with the introductions. I'll go ahead and kick it off. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to be here today. For those of you that I haven't had the pleasure of working with directly, my name is Blair Newton, and I'm the president of Professional Bayway Management. Incredibly, this year marks my 25th year working in the community association management industry. I can't believe it. And even with 2.5 decades of experience, I can tell you last year was unlike anything I've ever seen, obviously. Like every resident in our area, we lived through an extremely difficult season. 2 major hurricanes, back to back, each with their own path of destruction. Our communities were tested. We were tested, from physical damage to infrastructure challenges, and from insurance claim delays to overwhelmed contractors. We all had to move fast and make decisions under extreme pressure. It was a learning experience, to say the least, but one that we've used to get better. PBM is more prepared today than we've ever been. We've refined our processes, we've strengthened our communication, and we've deepened our partnerships with key vendors who delivered for us most when it mattered. That's what today's all about. Today, we're going to walk you through what we've learned in the past year and how we're going to apply those lessons to help you guys be more resilient and responsive moving forward. To help us do that, I've invited a group of professionals who worked with us pretty much through the entire thing and are still working with us now. They were in the trenches with us, and they're going to share some valuable insight today as to kind of how they see things going forward and how to prepare all of us better, so this doesn't happen, in the same manner as it did last year, and we're more prepared to do so. That being said, there are a number of other vendors that we've also strengthened our relationships with. These are just a sampling of some great vendors that we've been working with. Obviously, there's other professionals that we would also recommend, but I couldn't put a panel of 20 people on the webinar. I think that would bore you guys to death. So I went ahead and invited these folks to help you, and we'll go ahead and go through the meeting, allow them each to kind of present where they're coming from, and I'll run through the agenda. And then at the end, we'll go ahead and do a Q&A. Initially, all of you guys, because of the size of the event, are muted. But if you could use the raise hand function, and I'll try and mediate and allow you guys to unmute as the questions come up. And if you'd be so kind as to direct your question to who on the panel you'd like to address it. If it turns out that all the panel members can address it, then we'll let them do that. But if you can try to at least give us a heads up as to who you're asking the question to, that would be fantastic. So, all right, so here's the game plan for today. First, we're going to hear from Claremont Properties, a trusted restoration contractor who will explain what boards should expect in the immediate aftermath of a storm and how to streamline the recovery process before it even begins. which is key. We all learned that this year that, that's hard to do is get going. The next presenter will be strategic claims, the public adjusting team that will walk us through the claim process, common mistakes that both boards and management companies make when it's kind of getting started, and what proactive steps we can all take to ensure a smoother loss, in the future. After that, we'll have FIP insurance. He'll provide a brief overview of what's actually in your policies. As we've all learned through this process, we've had some surprises of what's covered and what's not. They'll also talk about coverage gaps, flood versus wind, and how to kind of avoid the unpleasant surprises that some of us had when you realize just how much those gosh darn deductibles are. And to wrap it up, we're going to hear from a local association attorney that has worked with us on, an awful lot of our associations, and let her address kind of some of the questions we had, post-disaster. What powers do we have, right? When there's an emergency and Florida goes into a state of emergency, what does that allow us to do? How does that allow us to operate? What kind of documentation we need, and how to deal with those owners that simply don't want to conform, right? Everyone that had a claim has had one or two of those folks. So that's going to be kind of the tail end and the wrapping up of the actual panel. After all of that concludes, which I'm hoping we keep that part within 45 minutes to an hour, I'll again open the floor for a Q&A, let you guys ask some questions. I'd like to keep that part. I really don't want to keep you guys on forever. I'd like to keep it down to like an hour and a half, if at all possible. So we'll kind of hit the hot points, do some Q&A, and then try and wrap it up. All right. And for those wondering, this is going to be something that I'm going to basically send out a link and allow you guys to share. It'll be posted on YouTube as a presentation, for lack of a better term, and you guys will be able to share it to whoever in the association if you find it prudent. Okay. All right. That is me done. Patrick, I'll turn the floor over to you. You can talk a little bit about Claremont and kind of go over the outline I presented, and then we'll go strategic, then we'll go Anthony, and then we'll go Ann. So that'll be the flow. All right.
Good morning, guys. I'll try to keep this as brief as I can and still touch on the things I think are pertinent to allow you to get some idea of what's best for you, your HOA, your condo associations, to be ready for a storm prior and post-storm, and kind of give you an idea of what we offer in that package. As I go through this, I'm going to cover a program we have. It's a priority response program that kind of benefits you pre-storm and post-storm. So I'm going to kind of touch on that, give you our high points of that. First, I'll start off with Claremont Property has been around since 1995. We are a complete remediation, roofing, general contractor mitigation. We are a company that can do you turnkey from start to finish on a storm, from everything from your mitigation all the way through your rebuild. We specialize in the condo associations, and it's kind of just turned into that. I think that's because most condo associations aren't funded or set up with the funds to be able to back a project of this magnitude when a storm hits. So as a company, we are able to come in and we finance your project all the way through until your insurance starts to pay. We don't bill you, send you anything until your insurance is settled. And I think that's probably one of the bigger things we offer, and I think that's why we do so well with the condos. We do about 90% of our business, I would say, with condo associations. Our pre-loss program kind of protects you. It gives you an outline to get you started. I think the biggest part of getting through a hurricane or a disaster is being prepared for it. So what we do as a company, if you were to come on with us, we're going to go out to your property. First and foremost, we're going to walk that property completely. We're going to get a documentation and pictures set up in an Encircle app that we have to track everything. So we have documentation of exactly what your property looked like, the shape your property was in, what you had prior to the storm. We were able to document what doors you're using, interior, exterior, entry doors, sliding glass doors, windows. We'll document your fire systems, your elevators, your roof, everything that you have. We will put that into a file so we have that ready for us when a storm hits. We're able to order materials, get you back up and running quicker because we're not having to get submittals done from HOAs to see what doors you approve or what fire systems you have. We're able to have that up front and ready for you as we start. As we get you brought on board, we have teams at our office who will take your insurance. We will go through your insurance for you, find the gaps in it, which I think we're lucky enough to have somebody that's going to jump in here at the end and kind of fill you in on some of that stuff. We run into that a lot. People are underinsured on things as you move forward. And of course, that brings on higher assessments and drags out getting back into your home. So we have insurance teams that do that, guys. We have a permitting office that's going to take care of your permitting needs. That's something that when a storm hits, and I'm sure there's quite a few on here with me today who have had this issue. Everybody within 20 miles of here, 30 miles of here is all doing the same thing in all these municipalities. Everybody's pushing, trying to get the same things. There's usually a backlog. And if you don't word things correctly, get them in the correct order, don't have the right FEMA documents, they get kicked back over and over again. So we have a team that does those things for you. We have a labor force, probably 2,500 to 3,000 people that we move around the country. So getting started, getting things done is not usually an issue for us. We have pre-approved contractors in your area set up and ready to go. We have an admin staff that will assist your HOA, also assist Blair and PBM, who, by the way, has been an absolute pleasure to work with, and setting this up for y'all is a fantastic idea. We have those people in place. So we also have the ability to obtain materials quicker than most people. We have our own over-the-road trucks. So when things get caught up and backed up locally, we're able to bring things in from the outside. One of the bigger issues we run into is debris removal. You're at the municipality's mercy of getting things in and out of there. So we have our own grapple trucks that will assist in that. We're able to go out and start getting the debris and things moved away from you immediately. If you're part of our program, within the roads being cleared, we will have our labor on hand within 48 hours of us being able to get to you. We will have drying equipment, generators brought out to you within 48 hours to get inside your units to start drying them out. We have dry-in roofing materials staged for us in different locations throughout the country. We have offices now from Houston, Texas, to Orange Beach, Alabama, Panama City, Florida, here in Tampa, Bonita Springs, Fort Lauderdale, up the eastern coast, all the way to Myrtle Beach and Charleston. So we have warehouses where we have these things in place so we can get them to you quickly. When we start a claim for you, there's no deposit up front. Once again, we are going to not bill you until your insurance settles. Our contract is set up for the mitigation part only.
Test.
We're not going to ask you to sign a huge contract all the way through rebuild. That's a huge obligation. So our contract is set up for y'all to come in, set up mitigation with us. We'll do the mitigation for you. And we have a plan and a contract that takes you all the way through the rebuild, which about 90% of our clients do. We have a showroom and a website where we'll go in and pick out your cabinets, your countertops, your flooring, your bathroom fixtures, all those things ahead of time so we can go ahead and get the procurement and things set in for you.
Hello.
Let's see, guys. I'm trying to hit these high points without boring y'all to death and keeping y'all on here forever.
Hello.
Once again, we don't ask anything for the HOA till your insurance funds come in. If y'all decide to use us for the rebuild, that'll be a separate contract. The only thing that our pre-laws program gets you and locks you into is the mitigation port, which is the coming in and doing the demo, the drying out, and the preparation of getting you back to the white box stage. And if you decide to go back with us on a rebuild portion of this, anything We send out to your insurance company for an audit. If your insurance company does not approve that, it is not in the scope of work, we do not charge or get paid for that. If there's things that have to be done to your building, some of the buildings are older, once we open the walls up, if we see things or things that are damaged that are not hurricane caused by the hurricane, we'll do a change order. It'll go to your HOAs. It'll be voted on. Y'all will approve. Nothing will be done without a signature from your HOA. Those things will all be approved by you before you do it. So when these jobs are completed, you have no surprise bills. All right. Now, with all that being said, the best defense for one of these storms, the disaster, is being prepared, guys. Even when you're extremely prepared, they're not a whole lot of fun to get through. So your best case scenario, whether it's us or however you decide to go about doing that, is to have a plan, have things in place, hire somebody that can start you from the job, take you all the way through the job. And when I say all the way through, that includes permitting, debris removal, every aspect from remediation to rebuild. You're only allotted X amount of dollars to your insurance companies. When you tend to break these up, and I think some of you that are on here went through this as we picked y'all up after the demo process, you start paying people individually and you get about halfway or 3/4 of the way through and you realize that you're out of money. Now you're reaching out to your association, trying to get assessments to get through. Get somebody in that knows how to work the system, knows how these things are handled, knows how to word your submittals and your insurance claims that can get you to the end. Like I said, the process is tough, even when it goes perfectly. I'm going to offer this to y'all. It's normally $1,500 a year in a 3-year contract. I'm going to do this. If y'all contact me in the next 30 days, your first 3 years will be free. We don't do that for many people. I love working with PBM. The 2 or 3 companies, the 2 or 3 HOAs I'm working with now under them have been really, really good to work with. So I would love to get a footprint in with this organization. So if y'all would reach out to me in the next 30 days, get some things rolling, get some questions, I'll send you all the information you need. But I will back up real quick and just repeat one more time before I turn this over. I don't want y'all to have to be on here with me all day. The best defense in this storm or disaster situation, guys, is being prepared. Having your insurance going through, knowing you're covered, knowing you have the coverage you need, having a game plan, knowing somebody's going to be on your property immediately following to get you dried in, get you covered up. We'll actually come out before the storm, help you secure your common areas, sandbags, boarding up, those type of things. As the storm's approaching, we will be sending out emails, phone calls as the cone narrows to let you know what our response is like, where we're going to be, how we're going to be set up, and how we're going to approach you. I hope this helped. I'm sure y'all have got questions. I'll be right here when they finish. Please let me know and we'll try to get you all the information we can. Blair, thank you for the opportunity, buddy. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Patrick. All right, guys. So to kind of wrap that up, what Patrick and Claremont have done, and as he mentioned, we've got Claremont at a couple of associations now. The difference between some other companies is there's no fronting of cash, right? So they're working within your insurance policies, which has been really nice for some of the associations because they haven't, although they had advances and things of that nature, it wasn't as dependent upon the money in the beginning as it has been with some other mitigation services or even general contractors that have done a great job. It's just they're set up a little bit differently. So what Patrick is offering, and we'll send out contact information for all of the presenters today, but what Patrick is offering from Claremont is basically a preparedness in a emergency. What do you call it, Patrick? Like an emergency?
It's a priority response program.
Okay.
Basically, we set you up, like I said earlier, to get you set up in case of a disaster. We get all your information set up prior to the storm. So when that storm hits, we already know everything we need to know about your project and your property to start ordering materials, to start drying in. Because the quicker we can get you dried in and secured and start to put back, is the quicker we're going to get you back into your properties. Whether it's where you live or it's rental, it's an investment. It's the quickest way to get you back in one.
Okay, thank you. So that's what he's actually presented, or his firm has presented to PBM clients is to waive that first 3 years. so we can get more people kind of set up to where if this does happen again, it's a matter of a phone call, a text, an email. My objective, from PBM side, is to really kind of have this way more streamlined, right? As many of you that experienced it with us, we had multiple contractors going, which I'm still fine with. As I mentioned, we have some other trusted partners that we love working with as well. But the more people we can have prepared and the more people that we can have kind of that one phone call and say, okay, it's team, it's time to go. That's, I think, preferable for you guys, for us, for the owners, for everybody. Because as I mentioned in the intro, we've learned, right? We've all kind of learned that although we thought we were somewhat prepared, we weren't. And now is the time to kind of flex those muscles and use that information to be better. And that's what I'm trying to put in front of you folks. There's no commitment, there's no skin in the game for me other than just giving you guys a source or sources that can help all of us get through, if God forbid there is another one, without a whole lot of problems. So that's the Claremont side. So Patrick's done. At the end, we can open up some questions. You guys can address it directly with him, but we'll lean right into the next part of that, which is the public adjuster side. So strategic claims came in quick story. It's actually kind of a laughable story. Both Bradley and Brooke, after the storms, I want to say almost lived in my lobby. And every day I would try to get past them because gosh darn it, I knew they were trying to sell something. And at that time, everyone was selling everything, right? So make a long story short, Morella, the vice president, ended up chatting with them and told me, hey, this is a great group. You should really talk to them. They've got a great thing going and they're going to work at Winston Park and you should talk to them. So make a long story short, I did. They have delivered actually exactly how they said they would. So I wanted them here to kind of talk you through the public adjusting process, the claim process, let you know what it is. Because when this first happened, there was a lot of talk of, well, we don't want a public adjuster. And some people didn't, and it worked out totally fine. But there have been other cases where they've needed one after the fact, right? And we had to call them in after the fact or a PA after the fact. But it's been proven to be most helpful. So with that, I'll turn it over, and I don't know, Bradley or Brooke, which one of you guys is going to talk first, but I will turn it over to you guys and let you talk a little bit about the firm, about how you handle things and the advantages of having a PA over just having the adjuster from the insurance company.
Hi, everyone. Both Bradley and I are going to kind of tag team this. Not to sound defensive or anything, Blair, but the reason why we do that is, we do, having worked all these storms, we have a lot of hindsight. And so we know that after a certain period of time, the help that you guys need goes away. It disappears. And so when help is really needed, or the realization that help is needed, everybody's gone. So we have learned that if we stay with people and we kind of guide them through the process or educate them through the process, that eventually those two things work out and we develop really nice relationships with people, or as with Blair, we waved to him every time he went by into the office. But we understand that, and that's from a lot of experience. But I want to step back for just a second. I am Brooke Doyle. I live up in Pensacola, but I am part of our catastrophic team. So whenever there's an event, I deploy immediately. Bradley, who will introduce himself in just a second, is also a part of our catastrophic team. Strategic we have now reached accomplishing $3.5 billion in claims in the last 4.5 years for our clients. So that includes that last storm. And we have offices all throughout the Southeast, from Texas, Louisiana. I'm a satellite here in the Panhandle. We've got an office in Tampa, up north in Lutz. And then our headquarters is in Atlanta. Bradley's out of our Charlotte office. I think I'm missing an office or two, but anyways, so we're strategically, no pun intended, placed in the Southeast. And so we've got folks all over. We've got folks in the Midwest. Hail claims, we service Colorado. So we've seen the full gamut of claims, whether it's hurricane. You guys have multiple storied buildings. So you may have a water pipe that breaks. Blair and I were joking about freezes earlier in the year. He's like, "Do you know where we are?" And well, you know what? We got 8 inches of snow in the Panhandle earlier this year, so you never know what's going to happen and where it's going to happen, even though it's not supposed to happen. And so there's a fire, tornado. In tornado, that's a thing too. There was twice as many tornadoes in Florida in 2024 as they predicted. So that's a thing now for Florida that we have to pay attention to, in addition to what we consider a daily type of claim. Bradley, if you want to jump in.
No.
And
Absolutely. I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Bradley Fuse. I too work at Strategic. I do run our Carolinas office as being part of the catastrophic team. I get to go wherever these big events are. So I do love your area, but I really hope I don't get to come back for a while. And to kind of piggyback on what Brooke has said, that we've done $3.5 million of claims. 70% of that is in the condominium association market, where we kind of specialize, because the types of claims that you guys run into on a daily basis and even on a catastrophic basis are probably some of the most complex claims that you're going to run into on a claims adjustment side. There's understanding the policies, understanding what the governing document says, whose responsibility is what is unit owner responsibility, what is association responsibility, and it can get really complex and into the mud real quickly. So having somebody to help advocate through that process is a wonderful thing to have. And to kind of piggyback on kind of what Patrick was saying, having those plans in the beginning are absolutely paramount. Knowing what to do, knowing where your policies are. One of the things we run into a lot of times when we have a big event like this, all the power's down. There's no internet. Having the important documents in a place where you can get to them, where you don't need the internet, so you can get off on the ball or get the ball rolling as quickly as possible. The one thing that we have run into a lot is you can have the greatest plan set up ahead of time, but what we saw a lot of associations run into problems with is the actual rollout. We know what we've got our people. How does that translate from our plan to getting things done? And that's, I think, one thing that Brooke's going to kind of touch on here in a little bit, because that is one of the biggest things that we saw where folks, us included, need to continue to work, because we try to learn from every event that we have. Is one of the biggest issues we found was the actual rollouts not going the way they had people had expected. So
Yeah,
Brooke, you might want to jump in at this
yeah,
point.
one of the things that I wanted to touch on is, I mean, having experience in this area is not like the greatest thing, right? Because it means you've experienced the loss before. And the general Tampa area hadn't been hit in 100 years, and so the response and having the concept of what a pre-hurricane plan looks like is difficult. There's a president of a property management company in Panama City Beach, and this was right before Hurricane Ian happened. And I was talking to her, and she said to me, I feel like everybody's already forgetting Hurricane Michael. Well, Hurricane Michael was a Category 5 that absolutely decimated Mexico Beach, and that was only coming up on 5 years outside of having that experience, and people were already starting to forget. So whether it's 5 years with one of the worst hurricanes that has ever hit Florida, to 100, you do have to go. And again, Blair, thank you for giving us the opportunity to try to share our knowledge. And Bradley's correct. We do have to continue to keep the conversations going, because there's a lot of variables that change. The insurance landscape has changed dramatically since Hurricane Irma. There's been this progression of changes there, and I'll let our agent kind of touch on some of those points. But Bradley, if you really want a quick run through, there's a few things I want to make sure that we get to, but if you want to run through just the general claims process, and then what we'll talk about is some of the, just a few of the mistakes, some of the hindsight that we have that, and how to change our efforts to have better action in response to those items.
Perfect. 100%. That's kind of what I had written down here. One of the things that I just want to get on real quickly is having the right team together, right? You need to have the right property management company being able to move a claim forward. You need to have the right construction mitigation team. You need to have a claims team, being a public adjuster. You need to have the right attorney involved in this, and you also need to have your agent involved, because everybody's going to play a specific role in this, right? On the public adjustment side, let me take you kind of through what the claims process is, because typically when we do talk with folks and we ask them, how did you handle a claim? It's typically, I had a claim, I turned it in, insurance company came out, they told me how much damage we had, and they gave me a check to get it repaired, right? Which is probably not the best solution for anybody. So as a public adjuster, what we do is we want to review the policy to understand what coverages you have. We'll do this in conjunction with your agent to make sure we know what we're going to be doing. And when I'm saying we, I'm meaning the total association, is that what you are doing is within the policy and is going to be covered within the policy, because we don't want to be doing things that we may not be getting covered for, or if we are going to do that, we want to know that we're doing that ahead of time. Ultimately, it is the association's obligation to present the claim to the insurance company, right? That's where we come in together. We will come in, review the policy. We will do the forensic investigation with our adjusters and our resources to find all of the damage that has been afflicted to the properties. A lot of times there's certain things that are obvious. The roof is ripped off. We've got windows that are blown in, or sliders that are blown in, but there is a lot of subtle damage that a lot of time does not get accounted for. And we need to make sure we give the patient, so to speak, a complete checkout. Right? Again, we do that in conjunction with your general contractor. It works best that way. So we have two eyes taking a look at everything. Once we understand what the damage is, we want to meet with the insurance company adjusters to get on the same page. The biggest thing in claims is to get to the front of the line as quickly as we can. We want to control the narrative with the insurance company. We want to control what their expectations are. So we want to be saying, here's what we see, here's what we're looking at. What differences do you see? At that point, we can gain a lot of concessions, and then we can also identify the areas where there may be some differences. And do we have to bring in outside? Do we need industrial hygienists? Do we need engineering help and things like that? Once we identify what the scope is, we being the association, now we've got to put the appropriate pricing to that. With that, we work with your general contractor. If they're the ones that are going to be doing the work, and we work very well, we have a great relationship with Claremont. So we can then put the numbers together so we know what we are submitting is agreed also with your contractor. So there's not going to be any aha moments where we agree to a number and the contractor says they can't do it for that amount. And then we go through the negotiation process with the insurance company. Most of them, when we have big events like this, don't have the bandwidth to get everybody out there as quickly as they like. So we want to kind of do their job for them in a way, which is helpful and buys us goodwill in being able to do a lot of the legwork for the insurance company, so we can compel them to pay what we believe they need to be paid. But the biggest thing, if you can take with the claims process, it's your obligation to present the claim. You need to do the full due diligence.
Wait, hang on, Bradley. Repeat that again and say it really slow.
Okay.
I want everyone,
Yeah.
I mean, and we'll get to some of the common mistakes and then what we do about them. But we want everyone to understand that it is the board's, it is the association's obligation to present the claim. And so if you think about trying to take that on, maybe yourself, or you think the property manager should do it, or what that actually looks like, You have to go up against the insurance company. It's not you just turn in some invoices. But I just really want to highlight that point because that's and when you take it on that way and being the fiduciary representatives of the association, your position as the board needs to be what is the financial driver, even though when you immediately get on the property, you're thinking about life safety. That's number one, first and foremost. Making sure that everybody's okay. And then some of the most literal things start happening. Bradley, I don't want to, I kind of stole your thunder there for a second.
That, to me, that's the important thing. And we have a mantra: the insurance company is only going to adjust the claim that you present to them, right? So if you don't find all of that damage, it makes it a little bit harder to make those claims down the line, because now we only have 1 year to put a full claim in, and 18 months to put supplemental claims in Florida. So it's important to get this going as quickly as possible. And to also touch on what Patrick is saying, things have to happen quickly. And if you have a team in place that has worked together before, it's going to make this go so smoothly. When contracts need to be done, we'd want them to be already reviewed by your association attorney, so there's no questions on what needs to happen there. We also want to have the conversations with your insurance agent to make sure we understand all the coverages that we have, or if there are any deficiencies. So the more communication that we have, it makes things run a whole lot smoother on the rollout, which is what we saw a lot of times. The rollouts were slowing down because, okay, we need to do, here's the contract, and it's 3 or 4 days to get reviewed by the attorney. Or, hey, we've got a contractor, he can't get out there for 3 or 4 days. So getting those processes set on the front side is going to be paramount through this process.
So just to run through really quick and highlight some of a few of the mistakes, and then we don't want to. Everyone might be taking a morning nap at this point if they. We want everyone to stay engaged, but a couple things that we want to highlight is. Like Bradley said, what's in your policy or what's not in your policy. And sometimes what is not or is excluded in your policy may be a matter of affordability, but very oftentimes we will see folks say, oh, I thought that was covered. And it was simply a lack of knowledge and understanding. So being aware of those things is important. If folks have citizens, for example, you may now know, unfortunately, that there's no law and ordinance coverage there. If you have citizens, there's no coding coverage there. And if you have a building that's sizable and there was a bunch of debris impacts, and you could be looking at $500,000 worth of coverages that are not available as a result of going that route. And it might have been your only route, and that's certainly not a criticism, but it's just about knowing what's there and what's not there and how to tackle that. The best plan. One of the most literal things that we see happen after a storm is it is human nature to control things and to get organized. And we will see people, board members, unit owners, physically going out and cleaning things up themselves. It is human nature. Again, not teasing anyone about this, but you definitely want to make sure that you allow the professionals that you choose to hire to take care of some of those things for you, because Bradley and I kind of joke sometimes that it's like a crime scene. And what you want to do is document that and make sure you've got all of the evidence that you can possibly have. And so a day, a few days at that point is not going to make a difference. But I know it feels good to pick up palm fronds that have flown everywhere. It just helps you feel like you're contributing, and we understand those things. So try to resist in the future if something were to happen, if it's a hurricane in particular. And knowing that there's a lot of folks that didn't realize that there's two different policies. There's a wind policy and there's a flood policy. Well, those are two separate claims. And I know it's a very literal thought, but there's two different adjusters and two different claims going on at the same time. And guess what? They don't agree with each other. Flood blames things on wind, wind blames things on flood. And then that's where we come in and we help clear all that the mystery of who's, responsible for what in that. I was talking to a property management group yesterday in Destin. Okay. Destin has not been hit since the 50s. And she said to me, I just, I know we have a few things in place. I'm just hoping it's not going to happen. Hope is not a plan. Hope is not a plan. And one of the mindset shift that us Floridians, we kind of have this complex, it'll be okay. But hope's not a plan. And we want you to shift your mindset from, toilet paper and worrying about I know there's protocol for tying up the lawn chairs, and that's very important. But it's not pre-hurricane preparation. It's your post-hurricane response. So think about those things that must be done, that have to, all the deployment of contractors and adjusters that need to happen in those days, and then write your plan from there. And that's what your preparation really is. And so some of the other things which are good checklist items to go through, but it's knowing who's coming on your property. There's going to be people that'll come onto your property. They've got a hard hat and a vest, and they're really, really helpful. And it happens all the time. And next thing you know, it's a mitigation company. And of course, this is not Claremont whatsoever, but it's a mitigation company that came on, was super friendly, helped you, but then they expect you to pay them, and the insurance claim's still being put together, and then they're liening your property. And those are all things that you can avoid by having having a public adjuster to help be the financial driver, so the Claremont gets paid and the community gets put back. And when you have a strong plan like that, you have calm, you have continuity, construction and claim continuity with community. And with that, Blair, take it away from us before we keep going.
One more thing that okay. I just wanted to say. When you do have contracts, and I know Claremont does this with any of your mitigation folks or your contractors, make sure they are for proceeds only. Yes. So they're working for what the insurance company pays, so you don't get any aha moments, because we had a lot of folks we worked with where they were charged a couple $100,000 and the insurance company only paid $100,000 for some of the mitigation. So that's one thing you want to be aware of. I know Claremont works strictly on the proceed contracts. So that's one thing just to be aware of. And then I will now close my mouth.
Okay. Hey, thank you. Yes, I'll reiterate.
No, Patrick.
Proceeds only as well.
We got to move on, buddy. Bradley and Brooke can talk. We know that. Thank you, guys. That was really informative. Again, this is all in the effort of kind of preparing ourselves for the next one, right? So it's all preparation. And as Brooke mentioned and Bradley mentioned, it's no longer, collecting toilet paper and making sure we have rations, from an association standpoint. And that's why it's just you guys as board members. From an association standpoint, it's about preparing, the association in totality, right? So we've had some really good luck with some really good contractors, some really good public adjusters, for what Bradley just mentioned. We've had some really good luck, but we've also had a couple that brought in a mitigation contractor that really, really beat up the association. So that's what we're trying to avoid with people like a Claremont or people like a DRT or some other trusted vendors that we have. We don't want you guys to have that ever happen again. So if we can prepare now, which is what I'm trying to do, then I'm hoping, if this does happen again, it's a matter of, as I said before, a couple phone calls, some text messages, and everyone being on the same page. So, all right. Rolling into, keeping with the theme of insurance, well, I'll go ahead and introduce Anthony LaChavo with FIP Insurance, formerly known as Great Florida. Anthony's going to go kind of through what Brooke touched on, the policies, what's what. A lot of us have learned, and it might be a little redundant now because we've had to figure it out. And I don't mean me. Thankfully, I knew what they were, but some of us had to figure out what these policies meant. and learn from what was within them, right? We've got a couple associations that had the dual loss. They had both wind and flood, and it's been a lot of work figuring out and especially explaining to the owners the differences, right? So when we're on town halls, folks get really confused when we're talking about, the losses that pertains to flood. And then if they're an upper floor person, it's really hard for them to swallow when they hear all the things that are covered under flood, and then they hear what things that aren't covered under wind. So it's been a tough pill for some folks, but it's been a learning experience. So Anthony, if you'd go ahead and put yourself on camera and take yourself off mute, and speak a little bit towards that. Then we'll follow that up with Ann Hathorn, with our association attorney, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So Anthony, welcome.
Okay, so you can't hear me or see me, you just said?
I can hear you, can't see you.
Really? Okay. All right. Well, why would that be?
Hit the camera button.
Well,
he's an insurance agent, not a tech agent.
I can definitely see myself, but why can't you guys see me? That's really weird.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
proceed. Just proceed.
Okay.
That's fine.
Strange. All right. So anyway, thank you, Blair. I didn't know you couldn't see me. That I can see myself, which is useless. But anyway, yeah. So I'm Anthony Lachavo with FIP Insurance. Blair, thank you very much for having me today. And so our agency, we specialize in association insurance. We've been in business since 1997. We're located over in the Tyrone Bay Pines area. And again, all we do is association insurance. So our agency, we meet with all of our clients at least 2 times a year. So we always have a midterm meeting, and then we have a renewal meeting as well. So I'm definitely an advocate, whether it be our agency or another agency, to make sure you're meeting with your trusted insurance advisor at least 2 times a year. The midterm meeting, what we do is we look at the insurance plan, the deductibles. We need to be familiar as we can with these deductibles. And as Blair said, and Brooke said earlier too, there's a lot of different deductibles. There's a hurricane deductible, tropical storm deductible. Then we have a flood insurance policy for the flood deductible. So it's I know it's a lot to understand for sure for many of us, but our agency is here to help, and you want to make sure you are working, if not with our agency, another trusted advisor that specializes in association insurance. So that's a midterm meeting, and then the renewal meeting, a little bit closer to the renewal date. That's an opportunity that we could look at changing deductible options. That's something that a lot of us have looked at, especially after these hurricanes, looking at lower deductibles, or maybe we're very glad that we had that lower deductible and we don't want to move to a higher deductible. Another thing we're looking at both the midterm meeting and then the renewal meeting is appraisals. There's a lot of insurance carriers right now that are allowing renewals. So we're getting a lot of renewals in our office without the carrier having an appraisal. So we want to look at that very closely. Do we want to bind coverage without a current appraisal? Is there co-insurance? Is this agreed value? And that makes it very tricky, because we really want to know. I mean, we need to know, and you guys need to know, the board's management, if we're using a current appraisal or not. One of the things that is frustrating for all of us is we can have the best possible insurance carrier, the best possible deductibles, best possible coverage. And within that, we were reminded, or maybe a lot of us learned, that there's just not coverage for certain items. A flood insurance policy that we use for rising water and storm surge, there's no coverage for pools or a pool pump or landscaping. And that is terribly frustrating. We definitely have had a lot of with these hurricanes. Why do we have insurance? What do these policies do? It's frustrating for our agency. It's frustrating for, more importantly, our client, the management company, strategic claims, everyone. So it's just a fact that especially with flood insurance, it's a federal policy. It's a great policy, but there's a lot of items that are just not covered, okay, which is very frustrating. Moving into a couple items, I'm going to share my screen. At least you can hopefully see my screen rather than me, which is not ideal. I get that. But one of the things that a lot of our community has definitely benefited from, and I hate to ask this, but can everyone see my screen I'm sharing, please?
Yep, you're good.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So one of the things a lot of our community has benefited from is loss assessment coverage. So and some of you on this call are familiar, and many may not be, but we're very familiar. Our agency, we specialize in association insurance as a whole. So not only are we working with board members, management on the master insurance policies, but we're also working with the residents, which means that, yes, we do HO6 policies, personal flood insurance policies, homeowners insurance policies for and we have a very vast, great understanding of them. So one of the things that has come up and been helpful to a lot of our communities is how the state of Florida expects us to react in the event of these hurricanes, and how we're supposed to, according to the state of Florida, deal with high hurricane deductibles, or even perhaps what's not covered. So back in 2010, July 1st, 2010, the state of Florida changed the statute. You can see it here, 627.714, to make it mandatory that every homeowner's insurance policy that any insurance carrier has in the state of Florida automatically has $2,000 of loss assessment coverage. So what I'm saying is that every single condominium unit owner that has a homeowner's insurance policy, they automatically have $2,000 of loss assessment coverage. So what that means is if we have 100 homes and we need to reach out in form of a property assessment, this is not a special assessment for painting or upgrading. This is for property losses, like a hurricane. We can reach out to the members, and the goal would be to obtain up to $2,000 from their personal policy. So 100 homes, that's $200,000 that the association can benefit from. So I know many of you have, like I said, many of you have had a lot of success with this. Others have not. We'll share my information at the end here. If you have any questions, we can help on how to, if you had any challenges. And again, like Blair said, there's other advisors too that you may be working with. I just want to make sure we point that out. Just a couple other items here is, like Blair said earlier as well, is one of the things that, or another thing that we were, that we want to know really, and we've got a lot of these different worksheets here, where what does the flood insurance policy cover for the association? What does it cover for a homeowner, right? So this is just one of our worksheets that we have in our office, and due to the size of it, I'm just going to minimize it a bit here, but anyway, this is for flood insurance. So when we use flood insurance, the only way that we're going to use a flood insurance policy is for rising water or storm surge. Those are the two most common ways, where this is not a worksheet that we're going to use in the event we have a pipe burst or a hot water heater breaking. So there's flooding, rising water, storm surge, and then we'll talk about wind in a minute. But we do have educational programs that we can put on due to, the panel we have today. It's not going to be appropriate to run through these. But the point is that the flood insurance policy for an association covers a tremendous amount, especially for our communities built before January 1st of 1975 that have homes on the ground floor. Our associations that are built after January 1st, 1975, that are elevated, that are built in compliance, we did experience a lot of frustration of limited coverage. It's called a post-firm building, built after January 1st, 1975. But what we're looking at here is the flood policy works very well for associations where we have ground floor units, or there's rising water storm surge that gets inside of homes. So it's important that we have an understanding, or you're working with our agency or experts on the call here, as to what the association flood policy covers. And a lot of us really didn't have any idea of the importance of knowing what we're self-insuring for, or should we purchase a personal flood insurance policy. So a lot of us didn't know that furniture or rugs or computers, that's not going to be covered under the flood insurance policy for an association. So really, we're looking at the association's flood policy. We're looking at a homeowner's flood insurance policy. And again, this is only for rising water storm surge. And the key is that the storm surge has to touch the items. The floodwaters have to touch the items that are damaged. Okay, meaning if the floodwaters do not touch the upper cabinets, if they don't touch the ceiling fan, the flood policy does not respond. The last thing I'll have here, move on, is that this is another example, or not example, but this is for wind. Wind is very different. The state of Florida, we introduced Statute 718. The flood insurance program is a federal program. The flood insurance, the wind insurance, hurricane insurance is not a federal program. It's through Citizens, which is state run, or it's through private insurance carriers, and they abide by Statute 718. So what's the importance here? The importance is there's a lot more responsibility on the homeowner than there is on the association. You'll see on the left-hand side, if we have hurricane wind damage to our kitchen cabinets, flooring, well, that's the responsibility of the homeowner, which means that we'd have an HO6 policy or homeowner's insurance policy, or we may be choosing to self-insure. And then on the other side is the association's wind policy. So again, we really have 4 different policies for these storms. We have the association's flood policy. It's a lot of times advisable to have a personal flood insurance policy, again, rising water storm surge. And then we have a homeowner's policy for wind, hurricane, and then the association's wind hurricane insurance policy too. So that is, that's what I wanted to share for the time being. And again, Anthony, FIP Insurance. Blair, thank you for having me, and we'll move on.
Thanks, Ant. All right, so guys, I mean, as Anthony mentioned, and for those of us that have gone through this and had a loss, we've experienced a lot of that, right? We've seen, as I mentioned, even prior to Anthony coming on, we've had to explain those coverages to a lot of people that were either disappointed or happy that those coverages existed. But also, it's important, you know, a lot of folks have paid off their unit and they don't feel as though an HO6 policy is something they need. You know, just the loss assessment coverage in general is probably worth having it. So that's something, you know, that we could talk about at some board meetings, and the managers can kind of bring up, just kind of a reminder, you know, and piggybacking on the loss assessment, that is only if we special assess, right? So, you know, for us, for those of the associations that had only really flood deductibles that were either minor or, you know, within budgetary constraints, that, you know, a lot of them were $1,500, $5,000 in that area, it didn't require a special assessment. But then we had other associations that, you know, their flood policies were $25,000 per building, and then we had, you know, then you've got the wind, that's 5% of the total replacement cost, and those really get high. So that's what that $2,000 or in those HO6 policies can really help deal with. So anyway, thank you, Anthony. We appreciate it. That went quite well. Brooke?
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention really quick, we have template letters. I'm sure there's probably a few floating around. So if there's communities that are going that route and you need a template.
Oh, God, Anthony. Man.
I muted myself. I didn't know what to do.
You're good.
Anyways, but we have template letters. If any of the communities are they're going that route, we'd be happy to share that. I know there's some floating around because sometimes you can kind of say things a little bit the wrong way, and it'll kick it back. So we can help with that.
Thank you. I mean, luckily, we've had pretty good luck with the letters we've written. So far so good, but I'll certainly reach out if we need some. All right. Last but certainly not least, everyone's favorite topic, the law. It's almost as exciting as insurance.
Almost.
Almost. Really close. Ann Hathorn, welcome, Ann. I don't see you either. Are you on camera or do you not? I don't see you.
And
Do you guys see her? Anybody? Shake your head yes or no. Bradley, you
Okay.
see Ann?
Bradley can see me.
Okay, that's all that matters. As much as I'm good.
Hi,
I don't need to
Bradley.
see you.
Nice,
It's all good.
Nice to see you. I can see all of you. Thank you, Blair, for having me. This has
There you
been
are.
really. Oh, you found. Okay, good. You can
There
see me.
you are.
I'm
Yeah.
on my phone because every time I try to get on Teams from my computer, it kicks me off. So maybe it's user error on my part. But thank you again for having me. This has been super informative, really, really helpful. And like everyone has said, well, maybe not everyone, but Blair has said, and I totally agree, that we have all learned so much. I mean, obviously, we wish we wouldn't have had to go through any of this, personally, professionally, but it's great that we at least can take these lessons and hopefully never have to need them again. Okay, so Blair wanted me to talk about kind of the legal aspects of after a storm, after a flood, after a hurricane, what the law says that boards can and can't do, how we deal with owners, how we deal with contractors, things like that. So as a starting point, there are emergency powers laws for both condos and for HOAs. For condos, you'll find it at section 718.1265 of the Florida statutes. And for HOAs, you will find it at section 720.316. The language is pretty similar for condos and HOAs. And basically, it is what it says. It is a list of things that boards have the authority to do when we are operating under a state of emergency. And a state of emergency is something that is defined in state law. It is issued by the governor via an executive order, and it will give some kind of background on why the state of emergency is being entered into, declaration of emergency, how much it encompasses geographically, like county by county or specific cities, counties, regions, and how long it lasts. You may be interested to know that as of today, we are actually still operating under state of emergencies, both for Helene and for Milton. Obviously, the original states of emergency were declared back in September and October, respectively, but they have been extended multiple times since then. The most recent extension for Helene was in mid-March, and it was extended for 60 days. I believe, unless it's extended again, it will expire on May 17th, which is 2 days from now. And for Milton, that one was most recently extended on March 31st, and it was also extended for a 60-day period. So we're still operating under the Milton state of emergency until May 30th, again, unless they are extended again. So that's something that's interesting to know. And the states of emergency for Helene and Milton were, I believe, at one point for all counties except maybe possibly the very far western panhandle counties. Brooke, you may be able to correct me on that. So yeah, again, we're still operating under the states of emergency, and I'm sure that doesn't surprise any of you all who have been dealing with the damage and the reconstruction from first Helene and then Milton. But the emergency powers legislation does a few things. I'll just run through several of the powers that it gives to boards. Basically, what it lets boards do is conduct meetings in any manner that is practical. So like if you can't post a notice of a board meeting on the property 48 hours in advance, as you're normally required to do, you wouldn't have to under a state of emergency. You could send out an email blast, for example, or you could really not even give notice if you weren't able to give notice. But obviously the goal would be for you to give notice of a board or a committee meeting in any manner that it was practical to do so. You can cancel and reschedule meetings. You can name different people to be assistant officers who aren't directors, if those people are going to, you know, basically replace normal officers who aren't available, who may have been sent somewhere else or evacuated and aren't available to fill their normal functions as officers. The powers include determine any portion of the condominium property or association property unavailable for entry or occupancy by owners, family members, tenants, guests, agents, or invitees to protect the health, safety, or welfare of such persons. This was one that was a little bit that came up a few times in the immediate aftermath of Helene and or Milton. Fortunately, not for too many communities, but for a couple. That there were a couple of condos, I believe one was the PBM condo, that had been really badly damaged both by Milton and Helene, and the consensus was that the people really could not come onto the property because of the condition. So that was something that the board had the authority under emergency powers to determine that the property was unavailable and you couldn't come on the property. That's pretty extreme, but obviously there are situations where that's 100% appropriate. You don't want people going onto a condominium property where it's damaged and they could be at risk of injuring themselves or further damaging the property. Kind of going back to, you know, what I heard Brooke and Bradley saying, that it's like a crime scene. You want to document what the situation is on the ground, and you don't want people going in and disturbing things if you haven't documented them as damaged or, you know, creating more damage for yourself. This is another good emergency power to basically be able to get rid of people's stuff. Like if we have flooded first floor units and we cannot reach the owner of a flooded first floor unit, and the unit is full of stuff that needs to be taken out so that, you know, Claremont can get in there and can start doing the demo. Is the board able to contract with somebody, be it Claremont, be it somebody else, to get in that unit and remove flooded personal property and dispose of it? Yes, under the emergency powers legislation, the board does have that authority. And I know that that was an emergency power that more than a few boards needed and availed themselves of immediately after the disaster. This is another emergency power to contract on behalf of any unit owner or owners for items or services for which the owners are otherwise individually responsible, but which are necessary to prevent further injury, contagion, or damage. That might be sort of the same thing I just mentioned about removing and disposing of owners' personal property. You know, that's something that the owners would typically be responsible for, but in an emergency power situation, if you couldn't reach an owner, for example, the board could say, all right, you know, we're going to enter into a contract with some company to get this flooded stuff, this wet stuff out, and we're going to bill the owners for it. And the good thing about the emergency powers legislation is that it allows those expenses that the association incurs on behalf of owners to be considered an assessment, so that the association can then lien and foreclose if the owner doesn't pay. Obviously, no one wants to do that. But, you know, if the association is spending money for things that are typically owner responsibility, you do want to have some teeth and some leverage to get reimbursed. This is a provision that doesn't apply to as many condos as it does HOAs, but it still does apply to some condos. The board could levy a special assessment without owner approval if the condo's documents otherwise would require owner approval for special assessments. Similarly, the emergency powers legislation allows the boards to borrow money without approval of the owners if the governing documents otherwise required owner approval for borrowing money. So that's kind of a brief list of what the emergency powers legislation says, both for condos and for HOAs. So I mentioned when I started that we are still under the states of emergency, both for Helene and for Milton. But the question is, can each board still use all of the emergency powers legislation legally on May 15th, 7 months, 8 months after the storms? What the emergency powers legislation says, both for condos and HOAs, the special powers authorized under this law shall be limited to that time reasonably necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the association and the unit owners, and shall be reasonably necessary to mitigate further damage, injury, or contagion and make emergency repairs. So can we really say on May 15th that a condo where the declaration requires owner approval for special assessments, can we really say that the board can levy a special assessment without owner approval under emergency powers? My guess is at this point, probably not, because it's probably not still reasonable. But was it reasonable in, November or December? Was it? I think it probably was, as long as you're levying a special assessment that is related to trying to, reconstruct the property. So I think that that is something that you need to keep in mind. Hopefully we won't need it next time, but do keep in mind that there is obviously a hard time limit. The emergency powers no longer apply once we're no longer under a state of emergency. But even if we still are, the use of the emergency powers has to be limited to that time reasonably necessary to protect the owners, to mitigate damage, injury, and to make emergency repairs. So hopefully that's clear. A lot of people have talked already about things that I had made notes for, but let me hit a couple of other things on the outline that Blair had sent to me. Documentation, post-storm, if we're operating under emergency powers, if we're operating, where we're sort of having, loosey-goosey meetings where we're not posting notice on the property 48 hours in advance, where we're not in a situation where many of the owners can attend the board meetings, where the board may be voting to enter into these contracts. Obviously, again, as I said, give as much notice as you can, and do make sure as boards that you are approving these contracts and approving these expenditures at meetings that you have minutes for. And if you are really in a dire situation where you just absolutely have to sign a contract for something and you haven't had a meeting, you really need to make sure that you've ratified and confirmed all of those contracts and those expenditures once you hold a regularly scheduled posted notice meeting where the owners can attend. That's something I've worked with a lot of clients on over the last few months, is sort of going through, all right, well, what did you do immediately after the storms? What did you do that you need to sort of back up, that you need to ratify and confirm, that you need to get into the minutes, that you need to validate the corporate actions, validate the expenditures, make sure that you have it in the minutes. So that's very important. Obviously, all of the correspondence with your insurance agent, with your insurance adjuster, with public adjusters, if you're using them, needs to be kept with the association's official records. Blair asked me to address owner relations, and I mean, that's a tough one because, we and that one sort of doesn't always make it to the level of it needs legal advice, but it just needs kind of, all right, what do we have to do here? And, you see sort of the full spectrum of owner relations. You see people, and I think it was probably Patrick. No, it was Brooke and Bradley again, of people wanting to get in, human nature, want to get in there as soon as possible, want to clean up the palm fronds, want to, help their neighbors out. We see that end of the spectrum with the people helping people, and that's great. And then, we see the complete opposite end where, somebody's trying to do their own thing and resisting, maybe even interfering with what the association is trying to do with its vendors. So you see the good and the bad. But my advice to my clients all the way along on this has always been and will always be that you can't go wrong with too much communication. That, even if you are putting out an email blast just to say, hey guys, we don't have any new information on the status of getting the permit to do X, Y, or Z, but we reached out to so-and-so at the city again today. We'll keep you posted. Just communicate, because when people don't get information that they think they should be getting, they fill in the gaps in their minds with misinformation and disinformation, and all of a sudden the board is taking kickbacks from the contractor. And why are these people here, and what are they doing, and why does my building next door, why do they have all the stuff done already and we don't, and our board is the worst. So communicate for sure. Anything else that you want me to touch on in particular?
No, I think you hit it great. And as you can tell, Anne has been through it with us, and the things where she's talking about have been, we've been in it together. So, no, that was great. And I'm going to piggyback, and then we'll go back to, we're going to go into the Q&A in a sec. So I'm going to piggyback a little bit on what Anne was talking about. And when I did the intro, I mentioned the things that kind of we have changed on our side. So I'll kick that around because I don't want to breeze over the fact that things have changed in our office as well. In addition to kind of having better folks and accessibility to people we now know can get the job done, we've made some changes here too, right? So, and that was a great lead in with communication. One of the things that I thought we did a really good job on initially was communicating with everybody, what we thought was initially happening, right? When Helene blew through, we got out communications to all the owners of what we thought occurred, what was okay, what wasn't okay. And then when Milton came through, we did the same. Unfortunately, what really happened, we didn't see because we couldn't get to it yet, right? So after the fact, we've had some really good experience in learning how to communicate with the owners, right? Some of it has been town halls, some of it has been weekly updates, some of it has been just at board meetings, depending upon the severity of these losses. But either way, we've changed. We as an organization have changed on the way we look at these communications and bulletins and made them much, much, much more frequent when we have that information. In addition, one of the things that we had a hard time with and we caught some criticism on and we deserved it was after the storms, it was somewhat difficult for the managers to access information because they couldn't get into the office of which was in a flood zone or the computer was down within the office. So what we've done internally is move, and we're in the process still of doing it, it's a monumental task, but move every one of your files in the association folders onto what's called a share drive or OneDrive, a version of such, right? So everything is no longer dependent upon us having power here in the office or having power elsewhere. It's just a matter of the information is going to be available anywhere in the world to our staff to distribute it to you if they need to, right? So that is probably the biggest thing in the change world for PBM is trying to make everything accessible at all times, whether it's by phone, by logging in, or even just going to the cloud. So we've made some big changes to infrastructure of the actual data, all the way down to the way we communicate with you guys by way of the bulletins. And I know there's a lot of you on here that work with us every single day on all these bulletins, and you've seen it. It's been most helpful. So that's where we've gone. Again, all of these people that are on our call, all of our friends that have helped us through this, I appreciate you doing this for our board members and helping them kind of see the path that we're all on to try and make it better for both us and you as the association. You've been most helpful personally, professionally, and we really do appreciate it. So thank you for taking the time to talk to us. At this point, I will go ahead and open it for Q&A. So how we're going to try and do this, and we're at about 100 participants, so it's not too bad. It's not something that we don't deal with almost on a daily. If you know how, there you go. James Scott Lawson. Everyone see him, how he raised his hand. So he's got a little hand ticker in the air. That's how I want it to go. It'll count you down. Like if there was another person that had a question immediately after him, it'll show number 2 on him and so on and so forth. So once you do raise your hand, I'll call on you. You can please unmute yourselves. Direct the question to the party that you would like to ask, to answer the question, and we'll keep it moving. If we can keep to a question or 2 per person, that'd be great because based on my timeline, we've got about 14 minutes. You got to unmute yourself. Unfortunately, let's see. Allow mic. There you go. All right, go ahead and try and unmute yourself. It'll be down on the bottom or on the top. If you're on a computer, you'll see it where it says mic. There you go. You got it.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure.
I am a member of a 60-unit private home association. I think most of this is dealing with multiple family associations, so what I have to say will actually relate to both.
Okay.
My concern is I'm an architect from up in New York State, and when I moved down here, I had to learn about your construction technologies and all. But I think what we need to do is we need to do more to not have the losses of a hurricane by doing better construction of what we have. In our particular example, 10% of the homes in our neighborhood had their roofs replaced since the hurricane. I've talked to the owners. I would guess half of those people had no problem with their roof at all, but instead had a problem, which I actually had. I went up into my attic during the hurricane and right at the end of the hurricane. And when I went up during the hurricane, my attic was filled with mist. And that mist was water being blown in through my soffit vents. I checked all of the roof at that time. There was no sign of any roof leakage. At the end of the hurricane, I checked it again. There was no sign of leakage. I did have minor water damage to my ceiling because of the high amount of moisture that was in the attic. Now, watching the things being replaced in our neighborhood, no one has had a self-healing underlayment. And that's a very important thing. I put a self-healing underlayment on my house, which means that since I have 72 solar panels on the roof, if any one of those is jiggled loose or the whole thing's blown off, everything seals and my roof doesn't leak. The problem with the soffit vents is that I wanted to have good ventilation so my attic would stay cooler, so my heating bill wouldn't be so high. I think I overreacted on that, and that's why I had more moisture in my attic. Are we doing anything in Florida? By the way, when I looked at how the roofs were being replaced on the 10% of the homes in my neighborhood that were being replaced, none of them had a self-healing system put on. Most of them had only a single layer of underlayment, and the underlayment is what really protects your home, not the tile. And because of that, these homes are subject to damage in the future, where if they'd put a self-healing underlayment on, we wouldn't be talking about all of this mitigation. They wouldn't have had the problem in the first place. Is there anything that we can do, preferably working with the state, to get people to realize there are much better systems than are being put on? And by the way, the replacement of the roofs in our neighborhood, one had a 2-layer underlayment, all the rest had a single layer of underlayment put on, and I would say one of the others was done properly. All the rest had defects that exposed them to future damage.
I mean, those are great points. That's not really our wheelhouse. At least this panel in per se is, construction codes and things of that nature, which I think that's more along the lines of what you're referring to is, code changes and building changes. But it's something the next time, I'm talking on one of my CEOMC meetings or FLAW, Florida Legislative Alliance, something of that nature we can bring up. But I think it's probably a different, let's say, lobbyist group that would take on that task, right, than those folks sitting here. So thank you for bringing it up. It's great information, and we'll certainly put in our back pocket.
Could I add one thing here?
Yeah.
If we did have better underlayment, we'd have far fewer insurance claims, therefore insurance rates would come down and everybody would benefit.
Agreed. It seems like we're always trying to fix the problem instead of solving it, right? So,
Right. Yeah.
Brooke, you had a comment?
Yeah, well, a point taken. I mean, quality of contractors and understanding, their practices is certainly a challenge. So we hear you there.
All right. We've got next question, Joyce. I've just allowed your mic. If you don't mind, go ahead and pop in.
Yeah, it's actually Mike Quirk. It's my wife's computer, Mike. So no problem.
I can't see you either. So as far as I know, it's Joyce.
So we talked about coming in and doing mitigation, but when I look at that, each individual homeowner, even in our association, would be responsible for their own mitigation, would they not?
Well, we have to specify, with single family versus multifamily.
This is a
right?
condo.
Yeah. So individually, Mike, what we're talking about is like inside the unit, as Anthony brought up and Strategic kind of alluded to as well, there's different areas, right? So Anthony's going to pull it up right now. So when it comes to a wind claim, and I mentioned that a little bit earlier, there's a lot more responsibility on the homeowner for replacement and repairs and items within the unit, which fall under their HO6 policy.
Right.
And then with flood, the association, it turns into a lot more work, or a lot more replacement items are in the federal policy that get replaced by the association. So it depends on the type of loss. It depends on the way the buildings are built. Anthony made mention about post-firm to pre-firm. That's a big deal, right? So he mentioned if the association is built on the ground, right, the flood is imminent unless it's built up. Right. So the post firm are raised, let's think about them either as raised on grade or on, let's call them stilts, whatever it may be, different animal, right? In that case, the flood's really not going to play unless it's sheetrock on that bottom floor. We had a number of associations that did have that. They had, not finished lower areas, but they were sheetrocked and they had some other things. So the association policy kicked in on them. But for the rest of it, you're right. It would be on the homeowner, whether it's their carpet or their couches, their upper cabinetry, all of that stuff is going to be on the homeowner, which is why you unless you can afford to self-insure, why even if it's a small HO6 policy, you should have it.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Of course. All right. Is everyone shy today? I tell you what, when it's a town hall or it's a board meeting, I sure get a lot more raised hands.
Larry has a question, but he
I don't
hasn't
see
done
him.
it.
Okay, good. Thank you. Is it?
He's raising his hand.
Oh,
Literally.
okay. Okay, so let's let Larry go, and then it's going to be Joseph and then Cynthia. Go ahead, Larry. Oh, wait, I got to get to Larry, and is it Larry Roloffs? Let me see if I can find him. Keep waving at me, Larry. I'm skimming through everybody. There you go, buddy. Thank you. All right. I just allowed your mic, Larry. You should be able to unmute now. You got to hit the unmute button. Look at the top of the screen next to like ended vent. There should be a microphone, like a little mic.
Okay, you got me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, one frustration I've had, I'm president of Madeira Cove Condominiums in Madeira Beach.
Tell them how long you've been president there, Larry. Tell them how long. It's
21 years. Am I nuts or what?
Yeah, I met Larry when I was, I guess I was 26, 25. So he's known me since I didn't have gray hair.
So one frustration I've had dealing with adjusters from FEMA. We have 3 buildings under different policies with our insurance company. One adjuster came through one of our buildings. All 3 buildings had the same damage from flood. One guy went through, worked it all out on his algorithms, issued a check for $98,000. Another adjuster came through with the 2 other buildings, gave us 0 for one building and 10,000 for the other. This one adjuster did buildings A and B, requires us to provide him proposals from each contractor, invoices from each contractor, paid invoice proof from each contractor. So it's very frustrating that one FEMA adjuster had his act together, figured out how to adjust and provide damages to us, and issued the check almost within 4 or 5 weeks. The other adjusters, we still are waiting for payment, even though we've provided everything he asked for. So there's no real question here. I'm just frustrated with how you're dealing with different FEMA adjusters who seem to have different standards or procedures, how they provide for adjusting damage. Thank you.
Thank you.
Should we take this one?
Yeah, Brooke, I think that's a you thing.
Yeah.
Welcome to our world.
Yeah, Larry, we totally understand. If you have 10 different adjusters on your property, you might get 10 different adjustments. So, I mean, again, this is kind of we hear you on the frustration that you're not, that work product on the insurance company side is not consistent. And that's, Bradley, if you want to say anything else, but that's.
Well, that just kind of gets back to the point of understanding what's covered in the policy, and then you as the association trying to control the narrative with the FEMA and NFIP adjusters. Because as we run into what you're running into every single day, so it is frustrating, but in those situations, having somebody on your side, whether it's a Claremont, a public adjuster, helping kind of guide that process, because it is frustrating and baffling. But again, that goes back to the importance of understanding the coverages that you have, and working with folks like Anthony to make sure we understand it, and then going ahead and presenting it to the carrier, because a lot of times they make the adjusters will be making mistakes. We just have to hold them accountable.
Hey, if
Call
I
us,
could,
Larry.
real quick, Larry,
Give us
I
a
would
call.
like to kind of reiterate what Brooke and Bradley just said. This is a great example of why you need to have a team on your side, such as Claremont, ourselves, strategic, because we do this regularly. It's a lot of it has to do with how it's worded, how it's presented, how you go about it, and those things are what we provide. Myself, strategic as well. It's just nice to have somebody on your side who's been through this. So what you're going through is very normal. It doesn't make it any more fun. It's absolutely frustrating. You're right. Everybody that comes out kind of looks at it differently and treats you differently, but it's just best to have somebody that can go in and fight for you.
I just had a question for Larry.
Go ahead.
So Larry, it's one association with your code, right?
I'm
Yes.
sorry.
Yes, Anthony, it is.
So Larry,
Yes.
and so there's not just one adjuster adjusting the flood loss?
No, our buildings each building has its own policy. So they assign an adjuster to each of those policies. Don't
Are
ask
they
me
different
why we have
carriers or it's the same carrier? That's
Anthony,
really-
we've seen it with the same carrier having different adjusters on different buildings on the same property. There's no rhyme or reason to it.
That's wild. Typically,
Yeah.
we see one adjuster with one carrier for all buildings. Thank you.
That is usually most helpful.
All right, let's go. Joe, it's your turn.
I guess so. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm going to ask this question of Mr. Wilkinson. You answered it in the chat, but I'm still not sure I understand. How does being under contract with a remediation company protect us against the price gouging that many of us experienced in the last storms?
Well, I can't speak for everybody else. If say you enter into a contract with Claremont, we are working for your insurance proceeds only. So we can't really go anything that's not in your scope of work, that's not approved through your insurance company, we will not bill you for. If we see things that are outside that scope that we feel that need to be addressed, we're going to do a change order, send it to you and your organization. Y'all will vote on it, sign off on it before anything that we have ever done. Everything we do for you will be approved through your insurance company or a signed change order through your HOA or your property management, however y'all decide to go about it. And that's a great way to protect yourselves. You're not breaking your project up into 4 or 5 different subs and waking up at the end and realize you're out of money. We work for your insurance proceeds only. We're going to go in and do the insurance scope of work in the proceeds that you're provided.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, Cynthia, you're up. So I enabled your mic, but you still have to hit unmute on your side. There you
Okay.
go. Yep,
Yes.
you're good.
Thank you, PBM and the agents and legal helpful information, almost horrifying information. because it's beyond the capacity of our board. And it just is. I mean, I can't believe it, what we didn't know. And our property is 44 townhouses in St. Petersburg and the storm surge stopped at 15th Street and we're located at 17th Street. So we just watched everything around us be destroyed, but we weren't. So,
too close.
Yeah, right. Like your line of hope is not a plan. That can't be our plan for this coming storm hurricane season. But the legal aspect seems part of this more than I hoped it could be. So what do you do pre and post with your attorney? Because you said the minutes have to reflect every change and ratify and confirm, which we do a lot of things, and then ratify and confirm during normal circumstances. So just any more comment about the legal preparation?
Sure. Cynthia, and first of all, I'm really glad that you guys escaped by the skin of your teeth.
Right.
So I would say there's not a heck of a lot that is specifically legal to do unless you were to enter into something like what Claremont discussed about the pre-loss program. You know, that's something that if they're providing you with some kind of contract documents for the pre-loss program, that's something that you'd want to have your association attorney review with you to make sure that there's not anything in there that's going to not be in your best interest. But pre-storm from a strictly legal standpoint, I can't think of a whole heck of a lot, Cynthia, but post, you know, other than the things that I specifically mentioned, I didn't talk about having the association attorney review contracts you enter into. I think somebody mentioned it earlier on. That is obviously something that is a big thing. And what I'm seeing a lot of, and somebody mentioned this from my own clients, is the problematic contracts aren't the ones for, let's say, the finishing work or, you know, whatever we're calling post white box work. What I'm seeing a lot of problems with are the initial, like, you know, the demo, the remediation, because those were entered into kind of in the fog of war, if you will, right after properties that had significant damage. People are scattered to the four winds. You show up, you're like, oh my gosh, this looks terrible. And you're panicking because it seems like everybody else is hiring all the contractors to start getting the work done and get stuff thrown out and get stuff cleaned out and dried out. So I've seen a lot of people enter into contracts for that demo and the rip out and the dry out that were really, really bad. They were not contracts for proceeds only. They were basically contracts that people signed with, you know, a company that didn't have any scope of work, didn't have any, you know, payment schedule, didn't have any amount that they were going to pay. And now they're sending associations these bills. And like somebody said earlier, you know, they want 200,000, they want 500,000, they want $1 million. And the adjuster has finally come back and said, you know, no, this is grossly inflated. We're going to pay $75,000 of your claim. And then the association gets a lien filed against it. So, you know, to the extent that it's feasible, you really, really, really do want to be working with your association attorney immediately post-storm for making sure you're not entering into that kind of a bad contract. That's really all I've got. I can't think of anything other pre-storm that is specifically legal.
Well, and if I could reiterate, you were exactly right. The two projects I'm doing for PBM at the moment, we're taking over post demo where they brought somebody in, huge bills. Strictly our pre-loss agreement we do is for mitigation only. We do the other contract with you after the mitigation started. But yes, we do it for insurance proceeds. We won't come in and throw you an inflated bill, but that is something that happens. These things hit. You don't have anybody. You're right. Everybody panics. They start trying to grab somebody. Most of your bigger contractors are already at work. So you get stuck with somebody you're not used to. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people in our business that take advantage of people. But yeah, just with a touch of the starting point seems to be the toughest part for everybody.
Yep.
Great answers, guys. Great answers. All right, we got Peter and then Nancy. Oh, hold on, Peter. Let me. Did I already? No, you should be good. You can unmute yourself. I enabled your mic. Nope. So, are you on your phone? If you're on your phone, look for the little microphone symbol, and it probably has a line through it. Click that. No.
Are you on your
Sorry.
phone or your computer, Peter?
It looks like a phone the way it's pointed up. He's on his laptop, he says. Okay, so on the laptop, look at the top of the screen and look for the little microphone deal next to end meeting or leave meeting. Top, let's see, it's top right on my screen. So I think it's probably top right of your screen too. Looks like a little microphone. It's probably bouncing up and down because I'm talking. Got a line through it. Says Mike. All right, I'll tell you what. Why don't when you figure it out, just start yelling at me and I can hear you. In the meantime, let's Nancy, I think I enabled your mic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can
Hi.
you hear me? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm at Shorecrest. We're a 79 unit condominium. I have two questions. One, this loss assessment coverage, Anthony, your firm covers our insurance and personally have handled the insurance for a lot of our units, the homeowners. We did an assessment because we were required to put on a new roof. And as part of that assessment, we tacked on an additional 20 grand. It was $1 million assessment. We tacked on 20 because we were in the midst of the remediation from the hurricane damage. And we weren't sure. We were looking for, a cushion in case we weren't covered. Now, in the meantime, the adjuster came in. We've paid out over 700,000. He came in with that they're willing to pay about 610, and he's missed some stuff, so we know that we're still in negotiation with that. But it took forever for the adjuster. So the two questions are: can my homeowners apply for this loss assessment because we put the cushion in our special? And I'm kind of confused because we filed the claim. Our claim was basically under the flood. Our first floor was wiped out, and not wiped out, but the first floor units had the damage. So the question is, we filed the claim, they sent the adjuster. So how do we end up with a public adjuster who, will basically litigate all of this for us and presumably get the best coverage possible? And I think, we follow Anthony's recommendations. I think we have pretty good insurance, but, I'm sitting here looking at over $100,000 difference between what was billed, and we used a good company for the remediation. They got all the permits. We are back almost 100%. They're just putting new doors on at the moment. So, which I think is pretty good because I have friends in other buildings that they're just getting to do some of the work. And that's not to say, that we wouldn't have used you, but we had a pre-existing relationship with the company that we used, so we didn't know about Claremont. So
neither did we, Nance. Don't worry. So I can probably help on that, Nancy. So the 20 grand, I mean, we could probably send out a letter, indivisible. they could submit for their proportionate share of the $20,000, which wouldn't be significant, most likely, because their minimum deductible on the loss assessment is $250. So the 79 divisible by $20,000
Okay.
wouldn't shake out, right? So, but if I know I wrote that letter for you guys to try and obtain additional monies. If that doesn't pan out, and we had to special assess for the 100 or the 150 difference, that's when the homeowners could use their HO6 loss assessment coverage and offset that bill.
Okay. All right. But then let's get to the second part of the question. I mean, we filed the claim. We just did what we were told to do, and they sent out, and I think actually the guy who came out was from a public adjusting company. I was just looking it up.
He was hired by, I think you have Fountain Group. Someone I talked to, I think is it Chad Little or is it the other guy? Summer's on the call, but she and I went over it. It's whoever Fountain or whoever the adjusting firm assigned. It wasn't a PA.
No.
Okay, so then how do you get, I guess the question is then how do you get to somebody like a public adjusting company to handle it?
Well, this is a great forum. But when we first, if you remember when all this went down, we did another one of these, right? Where I had another PA in it. A lot of people went and they kicked tires with various PAs when this started, and a lot of folks felt, hey, we're good. We think we're okay. And some came back and went over to Brooke and Bradley or to Andrew was the gentleman who I brought on last time. We've got a number of associations but let's, we wrote that letter trying to obtain the additional coverage where I picked it apart. We can start there. And if you still feel, if you still feel like you're not getting the right deal, then I'm sure Brooke and Bradley, would be more than happy to touch Shorecrest and kind of explain how that would work.
Okay. And I think you're missing what my actual question is. Okay. God forbid we go through this again. Do you just immediately go to get a public adjuster and I'm trying to anticipate. I'm, praying, being somebody who's here 24/7. I don't want to go through this again. I mean, I wake up in the morning and I got emails from people who are making me crazy, and we're almost 100% complete. So I guess I'm trying to preemptively strike.
Nancy, I think the answer is just what we've been doing today, preparedness. Have someone like us, whether it's us or somebody else, somebody like Brooke and Bradley, these guys involved pre-storm. So you have a plan, you're ready. I know we have people in place, I'm sure Brooke and them do as well, that assist to where the HOA presidents and people aren't being bombarded with everything. We have admin staff that take that over for you. We handle those kind of things. I'm sure Brooke and Bradley have the same kind of situation there. So the best case scenario for you is to be ready. And to be honest with you, even when it goes perfect, it's still not a lot of fun. But the best way to get through it is to be prepared. And it seems like y'all have done a pretty good job so far.
Yeah, Nancy, what I would suggest is have a conversation with Brooke and myself, learn more about what we do, and then you'll have a better idea the next time. When does it make sense to bring us in? When do you get to that point? And it may differ depending on the claim. So what I always like to say now is, Nancy, now you know a guy and a girl that can help you learn more, and then you'll be able to determine when it makes the best sense for you to bring somebody on board, right?
All right. And Bradley?
That was also going to
we don't want to need you.
No, 100%, Nancy.
Nobody wants to need us, Nancy, ever.
But right. And Nancy, my response was going to be, it's not always, do you always hire a public adjuster? No, you might not need one all of the time.
100%.
But there are situations. Yeah.
Knowing the options and when to bring somebody in is important. And as Ann says, you don't need a public adjuster on every claim, right? Brooke and I are probably the only ones you'll ever hear say that. But knowing what the options are is going to be important, and that'll make your decisions a whole lot easier on the wins and the wheres.
Okay.
All right. You good, Nance?
You.
All right, cool. All right. I think it's Tim Riley, but it says John Riley. So If it's
No,
John,
it's-
then I know a couple of you guys because they're oh, there you are.
It's
Hey,
John
bud.
Riley.
Yeah, now I can see you. That helps. When I can see you guys, it really helps. All right, go for it.
I have a quick question for Patrick, just a clarification. That,
Yes, sir.
Does remediation include demolition?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Thank you. And my next question, or really statement, is our association discovered that we have an insurance policy that doesn't allow the use of public adjusters.
Oh, huh.
Really?
I mean, I didn't, I mean, these policies were, acquired a while ago, and I probably nobody was aware of that. So I know, Brad, you're aware of what we're talking about, and
Yep.
if somebody has a policy like that, how have you been dealing with that?
Well, if that's in your policy, then we would be good people to go with, and we have people in place in our company who have the knowledge to obtain those kind of things. Michael, who was going to be there today but couldn't make it to the meeting. We do a whole lot of work with Bradley and Brooke and those guys up there, but we are able to handle those kind of things if we can.
Well,
I'm not an insurance expert, but that seems like that could potentially be unlawful.
There a lot of these newer policies do have
states.
that language.
But
That's crazy.
I've seen that.
Yeah, I've never heard of that.
Brooke, you
Have y'all,
want
Brooke?
to lean in on that?
Yeah, so it depends on, a lot of times it's a non-admitted carrier. But one of the things that we
Right.
do, we understand that there's some case law going on right now in Louisiana that's kind of flip-flop back and forth. And we feel that it may bleed back over into Florida on whether or not that is lawful. It's going to take certainly a group to fight that because you should be able to advocate for yourself. You can hire an attorney. It's the same thing. So it's just a form of advocacy. So when you're going through the policy, make sure that you're aware of that language, and then you decide, okay, ask yourself, why is it that they're trying to limit us from advocating for ourselves? And the other thing too is in those scenarios, we will work with your association attorney, and then we can work as a building consultant to help, build the claim, and then work with your attorney as a way to manage that.
Oh, so that's like a workaround, huh?
Brooke,
Interesting.
if I could say something.
Yes.
So one of our communities in Dunedin, surplus lines carrier, they have that verbiage in there, and your team is working successfully with that association.
Yep.
I just want you to, okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Anthony, I think this is an Anthony question. It's in the chat. Is there a time limit on filing the loss assessment claim on the HO6? Anthony, that's a you thing. Are you there?
Yeah, no, I'm thinking, it's during the policy period. So well, that's not true, actually. I need to get back with you on the answer to that question.
All right, Robin, do you still, was that your question, Robin, or do you want to, here, I'll unmute you. Robin, go ahead and hit unmute. That was, I just want to make sure you got your answer.
That was my question. Thank you very much. Yeah,
You're
thanks, because
welcome.
we're being told it's 90
I will get
days.
that answer from our team.
Yeah, we had an owner that got it kicked back. And the other thing, if you guys have letters that are working, or whatever it is that you have that's working, we would appreciate some help with that, because our owners are not being successful in filing that claim right now.
The wording is very,
that letter for sure.
Yeah, the wording is, if you read the letter, you're gonna be like, this is not that big of a deal, but it's worded so specifically yet generically at the same time to make sure that you trigger the loss assessment. So the slightest bit of language can change whether or not that gets accepted or not. And
correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but it seems to be a carrier specific issue as well, because we've had carriers that someone submitted hey, I need $1,500 because of this, and it flew through. And then we have other carriers that have asked for everything but the kitchen sink to be put into a letter and or document. So, Robin, I think the letters are typically written very similarly. It just, there's some carriers that just kick it back. Typically, anyone that has a HO6 with Citizens or any of that, those seem to be tough. But your regular private, it seems to be okay. So, guys, if you don't mind, so what my thought is at the end of this webinar or our little meeting here, my intention is to send out documentation or contact information for the presenters to all of you folks as board members. I'll also send out a copy of the link once this processes. I've got to edit it a little bit because I think that meeting started on the recording a half hour too early because I think people were just anxious to get on. So I've got to edit that. So my intent is to provide all of the contact information to both your managers, right? Because a lot of you, I mean, that's who you should be going to get some assistance with this, but also to you guys as individuals. I'll put it in their emails, their phone numbers, whatever they want me to share with you. And guys, presenters, if you have something you want me to send out with said email, as long as it's not larger than 10, I think it's 10 megabytes, I can send it in a broadcast. So I don't want a bunch of pictures. I don't want your fancy LinkedIn profiles. I just want the bolts, right? So what they need to be able to get in contact, should they need us, need you guys going forward. But again, the intent of the webinar was kind of to show you guys kind of where we're at, where we're, how we've adjusted, some of the people that we brought in that have helped us adjust. Again, I don't want to ram anybody down your throat. These are just great examples of great people that we've had a great time working with. There are, other companies that we've had great work done by as well. So I don't want to present it in such a way that this is at all a sales pitch. It's just really to prepare you guys or give you the opportunity to let us prepare you, in the event a next Helene or a next Milton comes. We're not all, making the same phone calls, wondering what's going to happen next. We all now know kind of the path, and we just have to execute. So the more prepared we can be, the better off I think all of us will be going forward. So thank you for your time. Thank you. I know we ran over, and I thank you again to the presenters. I know I took too much of your time today, but I know that, we've still got 71 people on. We were strong at about 105. So I guess some people kind of had to go, but I know everyone appreciates it more than you know. So good luck. I hope to God we don't have to have another webinar about floods or hurricanes for a while. My intention for the next webinar for the board members that are still on is I'd like to address reading a financial statement and budgeting would be my preference for the next webinar. And then we will talk, the webinar after that will be pertaining to project coordination. So I've got some plans. I like to do them every quarter. Obviously, that did not occur with the storms. It was a little bit busy, but we're back, and that's the intention. So again, thank you very much. Have a wonderful day, and
Thank you.
take care. All right.
Thank
bye-bye.
you, Blair.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Blair. Thanks, other
Bye, guys.
presenters. Bye.